take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
And we've got a lot to get to this week in the week of wrestling. First thing that we want to hit on is that Shinsuke Nakamura was back Friday night on SmackDown. I know Patrick was pretty excited about it. Patrick, you want to lead off on that one?
Yeah, I've always been, and first of all, apologies if my voice sounds a little not normal this week. I've been a little bit under the weather. This is what happens when you have two kids, and kids, while they are lovely, they do not respect your personal space, and they'll literally come up and just grab your face and cough right in your mouth, and then you just get sick. That's what most of adulting is. But yeah, Shinsuke was back on SmackDown. You know, we have talked about before in the past. We really don't think that Shinsuke has been utilized maybe in the best way in WWE since he's been there, coming off the high that he was coming off of in New Japan and just how hot of an act that he was. I think it's been over 7 years at this point. It's crazy to think about. Shinsuke's been in WWE for that long. But it was nice to see him back. You know, I think the biggest question I had watching him on Friday night was just like, what do they do with him?
Yeah, where do they put him?
I mean, he's a former WWE champion, so he has that pedigree. But, like, man, you know, the top of the card is so stacked right now, especially if you're only going to have one world champion, which, you know, there's been talk about splitting the belts, but as of right now, it hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, I don't know. Could there be a Shinsuke Gunther match somewhere down the line? You know, that could be entertaining. But, yeah, the King of Strong Style is back. But you know, he looked okay. You know, he's a little bit older. You know, he's not hitting that knee as hard as he was back in, you know, New Japan back in the day. But it's always cool to see him back. He has a charisma that transcends any kind of language. And yeah, the artist is back for another run in the WWE, so we'll see how far he goes this time.
Yeah, I'm going to be real honest. I hadn't thought about him in forever, and he showed up Friday night. I was like, oh shit, he's back. I was like, I just didn't even really realize that he was missing. Sometimes that just happens. I mean, you know, you get so wrapped up in some of the other storylines. It's like some of these other people just kind of fall the wayside. I just kind of figured that's what had happened.
That happens, yeah. And listeners, if listeners out there have never seen any of his New Japan stuff, I would encourage you to get on YouTube and just watch some matches. They have some for free up there. I mean, this dude was, you know, the style that he worked, you can see it in everything else, right? You can even see it in Kenny's V-trigger knee. Like, that's the reason Kenny Omega started doing the knee, was because he was trying to take the place of Nakamura. And Nakamura had the finish and running knee, and Kenny put his spin on it. And, you know, now everyone's doing freaking knees everywhere, you know? Every wrestler now has some kind of running knee strike. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then they made the 6-man match official for the next premium live event, which we all saw coming. That should be fun. I mean, that's going to be probably one of the better matches, I would think, of that event. It's still kind of weird seeing Matt Riddle with KO and Sami Zayn, but
well, what's even weirder is that he's in briefs.
Yeah.
He's briefs with no knee pads, no nothing. He's naked out there.
Yeah, y'all probably caught on lately if you haven't. But my wife has picked up on watching some wrestling with me lately, and the first week he was back, she was like, "Who is this man, and why don't he have on any shoes?" And then last week she's like, "His whole junk's gonna fall out one of these days. Like, he's just barely wearing anything."
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be so bad, I don't think, if he was in, like, you know, since he's a cage fighter, if he had on, like, the cage fighter kind of shorts, you know, basketball shorts or whatever.
All right.
But he's in a brief. And there's something about, like, not having knee pads. You know, we expect wrestlers to just look a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, we just kind of, dudes in briefs and knee pads and boots, and you're like, yeah, if you take him like outside of wrestling ring, like put him inside a Walmart, he looks dumb. But like inside a wrestling ring, that's just how they look.
Yeah.
But when you take the boots and the knee pads away,
Yeah.
and just wear the briefs, it's kind of like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, he wears a jacket halfway down the ramp and then takes it off.
Yeah, it's odd. And somebody else has made this up on another podcast, but like, if he's like a cage fighter and throwing kicks, wouldn't it make more sense? And wouldn't it hurt his opponent more if he wore boots?
Yeah, right.
If you were trying to do the maximum amount of damage to somebody,
Seems like you take a ladder or something to the foot the wrong way, and you're kind of fucked out there, cuz.
Yeah. I mean, when I was wrestling, I usually wore elbow pads. I always wore knee pads, boots, and I had a singlet. And then I'd wear elbow pads and I would tape my wrist. And there was one match that I didn't wear elbow pads. And I got back to the back and I was like, I'll never fucking not wear elbow pads ever again. I just could not. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see the guys who have everybody's got their thing that makes them comfortable, right? And I guess he's just comfortable being practically, 3 sheets of little pleather away from being butt ass naked in front of a bunch of people. So
yeah. It could all fall out sooner or later out there one of these days with my man Riddle.
It's still such an odd pairing with him and Sammy and KO. It's still, I don't know. Like he's getting a lot of screen time because this story is basically the A story going on in WWE right now, and so he is smack dab in the middle of it. And I don't know how he fits.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he's still in with this little story after the live event, the PLE. I'm just gonna call it fuck a pay-per-view. It'll be interesting to see, if he's still in that circle with them, or if they just say, "Well, this is the end of that story," and then something else happens. I don't know.
Yeah,
and then Monday night we got confirmation that Brock versus Cody is going to happen at the pay-per-view. Cause saw that one coming from a mile away, but it was good to see it confirmed.
Both Brock and Trish went into the same closet, didn't they?
Yeah.
Same kind of look of the veteran coming back with the cowboy hat and the coat.
Yeah. They just changed clothes in between segments.
Yeah, and then Cody beating the hell out of everybody. I think that would be a good match. It does give something Cody to do. You would have to imagine Cody's going to get the win.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would beat him twice back to back like that. But they could, if they're going to tell this tale of redemption and if they're doing Rocky with Cody Rhodes and maybe they beat him again, but you got to think that they would let him get the win over Brock in Puerto Rico. I think the Puerto Rico, at least it should be a cool atmosphere. I think the crowd's going to be really hyped for it.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of LWO shirts in the crowd. The WWE marketing department never misses an opportunity to sell a T-shirt. So LWO with Escobar and all his crew. The way Monday Night Raw ended too was just kind of fantastic with everybody coming out and beating everybody's ass.
Yeah, I think basically everybody at the show that night ended up out in the ring. It looked like.
Well, all the factions, right? Like there's just basically gang warfare.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool too to see like the Bloodline and Judgment Day kind of interact because they are the two biggest heel groups in WWE right now. And so, of course, who better to set all that up than Paul Heyman to just weave that story so expertly in, what did he do, like 5-6 minutes?
Yeah.
Where he's just like, you have a problem, we have a problem. I talked to Roman Reigns. We're getting, we talked to, and it kind of made it seem like Damian Priest was the leader of Judgment Day. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. And I didn't know if they were leaning into that because of the, the South American angle where they're going to, for the pay-per-view. But like, I think you're right. I mean, in terms of how that show went.
I mean, yeah, Paul Heyman interacted with, he mentioned Finn Balor by name, and then there was that interaction with Rhea Ripley where she's staring down Solo Sikoa. But yeah, Paul talking with Damian made it seem like, they're the two that brokered the backstage deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Damian Priest is a guy that has a lot of potential. He's still young. The problem with Finn Balor is he's getting up there in age. So, he's already had injury concerns. He, first Universal Champion and has to relinquish the title the very next night due to injury. And then Dominic is not any kind of guy to lead a group at this point in his career. We've talked about, we all think Rhea Ripley should be the leader of that group. And then again, as we talked about, good luck keeping her a heel. There was a Rhea chant that broke out during Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And once again, the investment in Solo Sikoa, they just keep putting money in that bank, and I hope it pays off for them. I just do not see. I mean, I'm looking at the screenshot now. Solo Sikoa is one of the smallest guys in that ring right now.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to shit on it or anything, but what's his finisher called? I forgot. The Samoan Spike or something like that. I'm like
Samoan Spike, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like him yelling and then basically hitting somebody with a lariat, basically from standing still. And I'm like, okay, well, am I supposed to believe that somebody can't kick out of that?
Well, I mean, it's a throwback to Umaga, and Umaga was one of the best heels in WWE at the time when he was around, because he was a perfect opponent for John Cena. They have the family connection, so it makes sense. I'm not mad about that part. It's just kind of like, I feel like if Solo Sikoa looked a little bit more like Bronson Reed, who was also featured in Monday Night Raw, then I think to me it would be more believable.
Sure, I mean that's my point on it. Is like
Bronson has a different physique, and it looks different. Solo is just he's thick, but not Bronson Reed thick, and he's on the shorter side. Both his brothers are taller than him. So I don't. Like I said, I'm sure he's a really nice guy. They're protecting him more than they've protected pretty much anybody. Outsiders like him and Cody Rhodes are like the most protected superstars in WWE at the moment. So that says a lot about how they feel about Solo Sikoa. I just do not know if he's going to blossom into the future of the business the way that they are kind of projecting him to be. Like, particularly when you look at guys like Austin Theory, who I think are around Solo Sikoa's age, and like Montez Ford, we really haven't seen him get a main event run. Like, if I were to give you a list of like, okay, we can have a draft of dudes that you can have for the next 5-6 years in WWE, how far down the list do you get before you get to Solo Sikoa? I can think of it probably at least 5 or 6 guys right off the top of my head I would take over him.
Yeah.
So I don't. Again, not a knock on him. He's cool. It's just there's not a lot, I think, to go off of, and we haven't even seen him cut a promo. So
yeah, we're probably still a while from that, I would assume.
Yeah.
So interesting week. They still got a little building to do before the next pay-per-view. What else are they really? They're really not teasing that much else at this point. Trish will get the match, I'm sure.
I mean, Trish, they're probably going to hold off till something bigger, right?
Yeah, probably.
Trish Stratus, by the way, Monday night. I mean, come on. First of all, kudos to WWE for kind of being somewhat progressive, right? Can you name Trish Stratus is 47 years old and she's being portrayed as an ass kicker. Is there even another show on TV that has a woman in her late 40s that's being presented as like this ass kicker in this kind of way?
I mean, there probably is, but I can't think of it.
And if there is, do they look as good as Trish Stratus doing it? Like, no,
probably not.
And then plus Trish's promo made a bunch of sense, right? Because, it's always, I love it when heels have a gripe, but it's like a legitimate gripe to where you could be like, oh, I could see why people get pissed off about that. Because, for all this talk about the women's revolution and all this stuff like that, like, it really was Trish who kind of started a lot of this. And Trish and Lita, of course, she mentioned it in her promo. They main event the first two women to main event Monday Night Raw, and Trish Stratus was this major star, and yet she has seen Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair and Bayley and Sasha Banks and all these women who have come after her sort of blossom. And obviously behind the scenes, they have all thanked Trish, right? And this is not there's nothing shooty about this, but it's cool to bring it into a story.
Yeah.
And to have a legend come back and be like, no, I want my respect. I want my time. This is something that I never got when I was at the top, and I should have had it a long time ago. So now I'm going to take it. I think that's pretty badass in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, she's doing a good job. She's, looks in incredible shape out there when she does get in the ring, and still can cut the hell out of a promo. So.
Yeah, I mean, she was never the greatest wrestler by any means. And, if you go back and watch how she jumped Becky last week, it was not, wasn't the greatest looking thing.
Right.
But, she has there's a cachet about her, and she's that legend. And so it's cool to see her back. We haven't even mentioned the fact that fucking WWE's going to have a draft.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Did they announce when that's going to be, or they just said it's coming soon?
It's the 28th on SmackDown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I guess they're going to have so is this going to be a true brand split? Because, they kind of have a soft brand split now, but it's not really because guys come on like Sami Zayn was supposed to be on Monday Night Raw, but he was on leading up to WrestleMania. He was on SmackDown every week too. So, I don't know if they're going to go with it hardcore like that.
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, it's kind of hard to.
Also, it doesn't make any sense because Adam Pearce, who's doing a phenomenal job, by the way, every segment Adam Pearce is in, he knocks out of the park. But he's been presented as the sole authority figure for both Raw and SmackDown. So is he just going to draft against himself?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What is the
who do you have drafting?
Yeah, the original draft. There was one GM for SmackDown and one GM for Raw, and they did a draft that way, like how every sport does a draft. Different teams pick different players, but is he just going to come up to the podium? Man, he should come up to the podium with a blue jacket and then come up to the podium with a red jacket.
That'd be awesome.
Just do it that way, yeah. But that should be cool. Drafts always present cool storylines and
shake it up a little bit. Shake it
up, different matchups and. I'm sure there's probably if I had to guess, I would think maybe one of the reasons they're doing a draft is because they're about to switch one of the titles to a different show. That would just be my guess.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if Austin Theory winds up on SmackDown and Gunther goes over to Monday Night Raw. That would be my guess.
Yeah, could be. Could be. You think they'll split up any factions?
No, because who are the factions you would even want to split up? Because I don't know if you want to split up the Judgment Day. And especially coming on the heels of, unless they do Finn Balor, I guess Finn Balor could break away and get on a different show. You're not going to split up the Bloodline anytime soon.
No.
And then who else is there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do Montez and Angelo get split up? Maybe that happens.
Yeah, people have been talking about that for a while, so maybe that happens. I don't know.
My guess would be Gunther, and Gunther and Austin Theory swap places.
Yeah,
because Gunther, it makes more sense. He's on Monday Night Raw. It's a 3-hour show. You can have more storylines that he can be involved in because he has the Imperium group, and so Ribsy and the other dude can be involved in the angles, right? And then Austin Theory, SmackDown has a lot of star power anyway, so he can go over there, and Raw's kind of lacking, so you bring Gunther over. It makes more sense. That's the trade that I would do.
Yeah. Well, let's get into AEW. We've got a couple of things to touch on from last night before we kind of segue off into something different. Let's do some quick hitters on The opening segment, you were watching live or at least close to live last night because you were texting me, and usually you don't get to watch it until later. So um, it was fun to kind of text during the show because it something was weird and just off last night. Pillars segment was kind of awkward. I thought the crowd was fucking dead all night except for when Britt got her tag in. That was the most live they were because it was her hometown. But like, I thought the crowd was mostly fucking dead. There were a couple times where I was like, oh, well, that should have got a pop. Didn't get any sort of reaction whatsoever. Um, so tell me what you think about the Pillars because we thought they were going to end up in like a 4-way deal at the next pay-per-view, and it looks like that is not the case.
I think they still end up in a 4-way. They'll have some kind of narrative shenanigans that cause them to have a 4-way match at the next pay-per-view. I think if I remember correctly, when we first a couple weeks ago talked about the idea of like a Pillars match, I think one of us mentioned like, hey, one of the things that might happen in this is that a lot of dudes are going to get exposed or it's just going to be a drastic look, right, between MJF and what the rest of these guys look like.
Right.
And I think in that opening segment, that's exactly what happened. Darby and Sammy and Jack Perry are nowhere near the level at this point in their careers that MJF is. And that was painfully evident Wednesday night.
Yeah.
That segment was awful.
I wondered about that. Like if this whole bracket thing is just some way to like give, like a facade, like they still end up in the 4-way, but I don't know, maybe it was just a way to get some matches going between now and then because it's we've done other podcasts where we're like, okay, well they got 2 weeks left, are they gonna fucking create some tension or not? Are they gonna start building some stories? And it seems like they started trying to run with this story a little too soon, maybe. I mean, that's my only thinking on why they're doing the bracket thing. But in terms of like the promos and stuff last night, I mean, there's MJF is head and shoulders above and in ring work too. I mean,
well, in ring, like, Darby has some cool things about him. Sammy has some cool things about him. Jack Perry has some cool things about him. But like, we talk about it all the time. We say it all the time on this podcast. Like, it's more than just the wrestling moves.
Yeah.
And MJF got a huge pop. Well, it came across the screen like a huge pop, and I think the reason he got a huge pop is because people were like, "Thank God, something's about to happen! Like the star of the show is about to come out, and save us from this." Because I thought it was you could hear a pin drop, and I don't know what is everybody's beef. Like it was a good promo 2 weeks ago when MJF was doing his bar mitzvah thing or whatever, and all the guys came out and that. But now it feels a little bit whiny.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, you were in this spot. I wasn't in this spot. Oh, you got this handed to you. I didn't get this handed to me. It's like, well, we already did this 2 weeks ago and we did a better version of it. And now we're just doing it again, except we don't have MJF out here to anchor the thing until the very end. And by the time he comes out here, the whole thing's dead on arrival anyway.
Yeah, because it had gone on for about 5 minutes too long.
Yeah, like, yeah, it was just, I mean, I get why you want to put these 4 dudes in a program with each other because you kind of you have the all-in show, the big Wembley, you're trying to put as many people in that as possible. So you need to kind of hold off on whatever your main event for Double or Nothing might have been. It probably got pushed back to try to put these people in Wembley. So then you say, okay, well, we still have a pay-per-view to put on. What do we do? All right, we got these 4 pillars. Why don't we put them in a 4-way? Cool. All that stuff's cool ideas. But and it's cool to put these guys in a situation, particularly Darby and Sammy and Jack Perry, because, again, I relate it to sports so much. You kind of want to put these dudes in a big-time situation. Let's see how they respond. Yeah. Well, 2 weeks ago, you had a different answer than the answer you got Wednesday night. And you need to be able to, if you're going to be looked at as a star, the big thing that comes with stardom is consistency. So, all 4 of these pillars were great 2 weeks ago. Wednesday night, only one of them was great.
Yeah.
And it's the champion. And that's why he's the champion. It's because every time MJF comes on screen, he delivers.
Yeah.
You know? And that just was not the case for Sammy, Darby, or Jack Perry.
So quick hitter on Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker versus Tony Storm and Ruby Soho. Like I mentioned earlier, Britt got a huge pop, hometown for her. And then Saraya's out there spray painting, I guess, Britt's family or some shit on the side during it. I mean, probably one of the better matches of the night all around, but I guess they're just going to keep running this whole thing until Full Gear at the end of May.
Well, it was weird because didn't Jamie Hayter won, right? She got the pin?
Yeah, if I remember.
And so I was like, oh, well, that's kind of weird because, like, why would you want to beat the heels so quick like this? And then, of course, we can kind of jump ahead because it leads right into the next thing. The Adam Cole and Chris Jericho face off later in the show. And then the alignment between the Outcasts and the Jericho Appreciation Society, when I saw them pop up behind, I was like, okay, now it makes sense why they would, you kind of killed the heel heat a little bit, but now you get it right back with this kind of
super group
and like the kendo stick thing. So what it reminded me of, except it was not done as well, was the Edge and Beth Phoenix segment that they had with the Judgment Day, right? We talked about it. That must have happened, I don't even know, a couple months ago at this point, where they kind of beat Beth Phoenix down. It was the I Quit match. That's what it was.
Yeah.
The I Quit match. They're beating Beth Phoenix down, and Edge finally says, I quit. And then, Rhea has that great line, you taught us too well. And she hits one concerto with Beth Phoenix, right? It's one impactful shot. That's what I feel like should have happened for this segment. There was just it needed to be one big move to put Britt Baker away instead of a bunch of little like kendo stick shots.
Yeah, that's what felt weird to me, is like it just kept going.
Yeah.
And
if it was one, I don't know. I mean, I'm not to say to steal the segment like that WWE did, but like if it would have been one, we hit Britt with a finishing move, so now she's out in the middle, and now we get a chair, and now we get another chair, and now Adam Cole has to watch the dread washes over his face as he knows what's about to happen, rather than Britt screaming out in pain, doing all this stuff. I think that's where a little bit more of maybe like a storytelling instinct would kick in, where you would be like, hey, we don't need repeated. The repeated kendo shots, at some point they're going to lose the magnitude of it, right?
Yeah.
So let's figure out a way to have one big thing that happens to Britt that puts her out.
She also called him by his real name during that segment too. Did you catch that?
I did catch that, which I mean, I guess it makes sense because he's on a reality show.
Yeah.
They're trying to go for the real work shoot element of it. But yeah, that was my only note for that, is that I wish they would have figured out some way to
keep it moving,
just to do one big thing as opposed to doing because they kept beating her ass with that kendo stick.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts about Takeshita coming out to help save the Elite?
I mean, it makes sense because Don Callis has been trying to recruit Takeshita. So, I mean, we have some kind of, there were some lead up to it, right? Some stuff like that. But like when Takeshita came out and he was staring in across from Bryan Danielson, in my head, I was kind of like, oh, I'd kind of rather see Takeshita in Combat Club. And I think that might be where they go with this. A little bit of a swerve where Takeshita is convinced to join Blackpool Combat Club by Bryan Danielson. I think that would be a nice little swerve because that gives you – who does that give you? That gives you Danielson, Claudio, Wheeler, Moxley, and Takeshita. That's 5.
And Yuta.
Well,
you said Wheeler, didn't you?
Yeah. So Yuta, Danielson, Claudio, Moxley, Takeshita is 5. And then you could have the Young Bucks, Kenny, Hangman, and somebody else will make 5. And then you could do Blood and Guts is 5-on-5, right?
Sounds right, yeah.
So, because if Hangman comes back, then I guess you have 5 for the Elite plus Takeshita. But then who is the 5th guy for Combat Club?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of, we're really jumping ahead here. I kind of just want, if CM Punk's going to come back, just fucking let him come back right now. Just do it now. Like, have him work with the Elite now.
Well, if he comes back, he ain't working with them. I don't think so. Like, they haven't. Well, I mean, if the dirt sheets are to be believed, he said that he wants to sit down and try to make peace, and apparently they're like, "Nah, cuz it ain't happening." So either Punk's bullshitting about what he's put out there to them, or they're just being immature.
I mean, listen, you would hope that all these guys could be able to sit down and put their differences aside and just say, look, there's massive amounts of money on the table here if we work something together. Because, I mean, the Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club would be cool. Fucking what if, and I heard this on a podcast last week, and it was a crazy idea. I think it was a Mass Man show, Kaz on the Ringer Network. He pitched the idea of a CM Punk Elite partnership against Blackpool Combat Club. He was basically like, what if fucking Punk came back to help out the Elite against Blackpool Combat Club? Like, well, that would be a crazy fucking idea if you could pull that off, convince people to do that. But like, because the rumor is, they're going to do this Saturday show, and they were going to do a Saturday show anyway, but now it's going to have to lead to a brand split because Punk and the Elite can't work together.
Yeah. So this is what we were going to talk about after the Dynamite stuff, but I mean, it's a pretty good segue into it, though. Like, yeah, they're just going to talk about splitting the roster because apparently there's still a lot of people that don't want to have anything to do with Punk, and apparently enough people that do. So I don't know.
Split. Okay, we'll take it in chunks. Splitting the roster, I think, is actually a good idea because AEW has so much star power right now. I mean, you talk about Keith Lee wasn't on this show at all, right? Swerve wasn't on the show.
Yeah.
Like, so
FTR wasn't on it.
Yeah, I mean, you just have so many people that you can build a roster around and split these shows. Whether that means splitting the titles or not, I don't know. I don't think I would split the world titles. I would think I would still have the world, at least for now, with the way AEW is. I think I would only have one world champion.
I said FTR wasn't on. They were on for like 20 seconds coming to the defense of Mark Briscoe backstage.
Yeah, which is Mark Briscoe. I mean, I guess he now has the crown of best facial expressions in wrestling.
For sure.
Trainer man, can I go?
I'm good, baby. I'm good.
He's fantastic. But yeah, if the Saturday show has to lead to a brand split because in the main emphasis is just because fucking, Phil Brooks can't get along with fucking the Young Bucks, then that's wild to me.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, y'all got to sell out Wembley, figure some shit out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And could this be, let's put our tinfoil hat on for a little bit, right? Let's play how we would do it if we had the pencil and we're booking AEW. I would be leaking all this stuff out that the reason we're doing a Saturday show, the network wants it, but we're leading to a brand split because CM Punk and the Young Bucks can't get along. So Punk's going to be the star of the Saturday show. The Elite are going to be the star of Dynamite on Wednesdays. I think the Saturday show is going to be called Collision. I think that's what the rumor was. Yeah. So I would have the main event of Collision would be CM Punk's return to the ring against whoever.
Punk. It's supposed to be July, right? Because that's when they're in Chicago.
June, July, something like that. CM Punk gets the win. He's, fucking everybody's going crazy. They love it. CM Punk gets the microphone. He starts having a thing, and then Carry On My Wayward Son just fucking starts. And out comes Kenny and the Young Bucks. And Kenny takes the microphone, and he says, you think that you could just run from us? You think that you could just start your own show and we're not going to be a part of it? And then you've done all these months. These guys have to be separated. They have to be separated. And then boom, the big reveal. Oh, actually, that we are going to – this shit is about to be a huge crossover. And then like I'd put it all out on the table. I'd had FTR be introduced at the beginning of Collision, and I'd have Kenny Omega or Matt, Nick, somebody just be like, look, there's 3 of us. There's only one of you. We know who your boys are. We know how this is going to work out. FTR, why don't you get the hell out here? And then their music hits, and now you just have to stare down, and you go into Wembley and do a 6-man. CM Punk and FTR versus the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. And I would have some kind of stipulation on the line. I don't know what it would be. But I don't know if it would be like, fake control of AEW or something like that, which is kind of the same story you're doing with the Outcast. So I don't know what it would be, but that would be that. I mean, that's the match to make, right? And then, you leave the Okada and Hangman Adam Page rumors still keep floating out there. So I think that for sure is going to happen, probably at Wembley.
So let's say if just, dream writing here. Let's say that match happens, then where does Ospreay go if we get Ospreay in? Because, there's been talks about trying to get him in there, and you had mentioned maybe have him and Omega. I mean, who do you throw up against Ospreay?
Do you do United Empire versus Bullet Club Gold?
Ooh,
is that a thing that you do with Jay White and Juice and somebody against Ospreay and Aussie Kingdom?
That's good.
Or Aussie Open.
Yeah.
You could do that. You could do Ospreay, maybe Ospreay Jericho.
I mean, if it were me, I'd say just run back Ospreay and Orange Cassidy, but
yeah, you could do that. That's a way to go.
I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to see him face some other folks. I mean, hell, put him up against Takeshita. I don't know that Takesha's got the star power yet, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah, but that match is going to have the star power anyway because here's Ospreay that's a walking 5 stars.
Yeah.
So, like, what do we want to see? Ospreay Danielson?
Oh, shit.
That sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
That might be the way you go. And I'm sure Bryan Danielson would love, he's basically getting to wrestle whoever the hell he wants at this point. So you'd have to imagine that Will Ospreay would be high up on his list. In MJF, where does that leave him? Is that an Adam Cole? Is that is it a Wardlow? Now that Wardlow has the TNT title,
he won't have it by the end though.
Oh well, probably not. No. It gets passed around by everybody.
Shit, he may not have it by the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, but there's there's a lot that they can do for Wembley. If they can get, I think it has to be main evented by the 6-man tag though.
Yeah,
I would have to think.
So let's hit on a couple of these other points, and then I thought of something else I want to ask you. Commander versus Jay White. You got anything on that?
Commander, cool as shit. Jay White is one of the best psychological heels in wrestling. And if you'll go back and watch that Commander match, the theme of that Commander match was Commander likes to run the ropes, and Jay White cut him off until the very end. So, Commander goes to do it, Jay White cuts him. Jay White gets back in the ring. Commander goes to do it another time, Jay White fucking cuts him off until the end of the match. Commander finally hits the big dive. And then, of course, the Bullet Club shenanigans happen, and Jay White hits him with the Blade Runner 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Jay White, I really hope he does not get lost in the shuffle here in AEW.
Yeah, it could be tough.
And maybe the brand split is the best thing. He'll probably benefit from it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be another reason why he decided to come to AEW, or one of the reasons, because if I was coming to AEW, my first question would be like, what do you have for me? And I've seen Ricky Starks be off television in the past for a long time. I've seen Swerve be off television for a long time. I'm coming in as this big name. Am I going to get lost in the shuffle? And then if you hear oh, actually you're not, because we're going to split the rosters and we're going to add 2 more hours of programming. So we're going to have to fill that time. You're going to be one of the main stars on one of these shows, wherever you end up landing. So
that could be it, because by all accounts, everything I've read was that talks between he and WWE didn't get very far at all. So maybe AEW was just like, hey, we're going, we'll figure it out. But I mean, they did know about the split at that point. I would assume it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, they would have to. They would have to know. And I mean, he looks like a world champion, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
he's been a champion in New Japan. I mean, he's got the look, he's got the promo skill.
Yeah.
Bullet Club Gold. They're going to sell a lot of those T-shirts too.
Yeah.
You got to kind of have to fill out that stable though. It's going to be interesting to see who they fill it out with.
So, do we get Starks versus Jay White soon?
Probably a double or nothing. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
That damn spear that Ricky put on Juice last night was something else.
I've never ducking the clothesline to hit the spear. Just great. Everything Ricky does is so smooth, man.
Yeah,
so smooth.
So real quick,
and Commander's all elite too. Did you see that?
He did get signed. They announced that after the show. That was cool. So Jungle Boy versus Guevara. Give me a minute or two on that, and then I want to hit on one last thing.
It's fine. Did you understand the stipulation that MJF was giving Sammy?
Not at all. And at that point I was like, well, fuck, I don't want to rewind and see what I missed. But I thought, well, maybe this just flew over my head because I had picked up my phone or something. But now I feel better about it that you asked that because I was like, I don't really get it.
Because there was the backstage thing that MJF was like, was he saying that like beat Jungle Boy and then lay down in the main event at Double or Nothing and I'll give you this money?
Oh, maybe so, yeah.
But it sounded like he was like, lay down tonight and I'll put you in the main event, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
Then you still have to go through this tournament. So now you've just gone from giving yourself a 50-50 chance to now if you tell Sammy to lay down, now you've inserted him into the main event. And now it's, you got a 33% chance to do Steiner math here. But like, yeah, I was confused by that. And it was clearly a pre-tape.
Yeah.
So I was confused as to what that pre-tape was. And I couldn't find anybody else on Reddit that had anything to say. And maybe I'll go back and watch it. It could be that I'm a dumbass and went over my head. But I was pretty sure MJF told Sammy, lay down tonight, I'll put you in the main event and give you this money.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make the most sense. Well. Yeah,
but it could also be
watch it too.
Yeah, it could also be beat Jungle Boy tonight, get to the main event, and then lay down in the main event. I'll give you this money.
Sure, but then you gotta, because if you beat Jungle Boy, you gotta get through Darby Allin too.
Yeah, which I mean, it's going to lead to a 4-way anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So the last thing that I wanted to ask about that I just thought about a couple minutes ago was the end of Dax Shepard's podcast. Did you see that? He's
Dax Harwood, you mean?
Harwood. I said Dax Shepard. Buddy, I'm fucking tired.
I'm about to say, I don't think Dax Shepard's in his podcast. That bitch, he got a lot of money from Spotify, didn't he?
Yeah.
That shit's a cash cow. He ain't into that thing yet.
That's two
Dax,
different shows.
Dax Harwood. Yeah, I did see that. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering how much longer he would be able to get away with some of the things they were talking about.
Listen, I really like Dax a lot. I think he clearly has a strong passion for the business. I love him and Cash, love FTR. I was reading some of the transcript quotes from Dax Harwood talking about ending his podcast where he was like, I never wanted this to be a detriment to wrestling, blah, blah, blah. But he was basically kind of putting a little bit of blame on himself, but it sounded like he was putting a lot of blame on the dirt sheets and stuff that ran with headlines and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to quite a handful of those episodes. He did say things like, the Pinnacle, Max wanted it to all be about himself. Like, that's a straight quote. Like, nobody, that's what you said on the podcast, dog. Didn't nobody take that out of context. You said the Pinnacle was made to make one dude look like a star, and Max didn't want anything else Max didn't have any other ambition other than that. He wanted to be positioned as a star, and that's why, they had a whole podcast on it. So to then say something like that on a podcast and then get mad at people when they take that and run with it, or to get mad at people for hearing that and then perceiving it a certain way, because you had to know that some guys in the locker room probably weren't happy with some of the stuff that he was saying.
Right.
I don't know. It just seems a little like you can't. You can't have it, but it can't be both ways, right? You can't have the podcast want to be open and let people in and then say things and then be mad when people are like, well, what are you getting mad about? I'm just saying it. It's like, well, you're putting some of our stuff out here in the open like this. And of course it's going to be juicy for the dirt sheets. If that you knew that, like, he's not stupid.
Right.
And that stuff drives clicks and it drives views. And I'm sure that was a main sticking point for Tony Khan when they were doing these renegotiations for this contract, which is like, hey, we want you here in AEW, but that podcast has got to go.
Yeah.
And
I was kind of wondering how much that was led to the decision. Was their negotiations?
I mean, I think it would have to be, because he's alluded on that podcast. It's his podcast has ruffled some feathers backstage, so you would have to think that that's going up the food chain to Tony Khan. And if he's going into the negotiating room, I'm willing to give you all this money, but you're going to give me something too. Then we're gonna squash this right here.
Yeah, you can always record the podcast after you're done wrestling.
Yeah.
He'll be doing it with Conrad Thompson at that point, though.
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt. Conrad gets everybody. I think he's already on Conrad's network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, I think that's all I got for the week. We're still kind of in that in-between period.
Just weird. All of it's weird.
Yeah.
AEW, you mentioned it when we started talking about it. It was really weird. Hard Cam was on the opposite side. Britt Baker was standing in the wrong corner for the tag team thing, but she wasn't standing in the wrong corner because the hard camera was on the other side. So it was
when you said that about the hard camera and the text, I was like, no, it ain't. And then I looked at it for a minute and I was like, yeah, it is. It's in the wrong fucking place.
Yeah, they had all of the cameras on the wrong side. That jib shot that they do that sweeps over the crowd. It's always goes. It's always on the left side of the ring, the left side of the camera left of the stage. It was all right last night. Just weird, and I don't know why that. I don't know why would they have to put the hard camera on the other side.
The only reason I could figure out would be because of the wiring, but they're running. They're not hardwired anyway. They're running shit to a truck. Like, I mean, I don't know though. The only work I've ever done with a truck like that was with an ESPN truck at one stadium in Florence, Alabama, and it had hard wires in place for things such as that. I would assume that most of these arenas where they're going are set up for the same thing, unless they're just running hella cables throughout the through the building, out to the truck, which is possible, but. So I don't know.
I mean, no, they got to be set up to do that stuff.
Yeah, because you run 6 foot of cable from your camera to the fiber port at the football stadium, and you're gold. You don't have to run 500 foot of cable or whatever.
Yeah, it's just weird because like we take so much of this stuff for granted because we've just seen it so much that like. When one little thing like that happens, how much it can affect everything almost. Like a lot of
feng shui last night. That's why maybe it felt a little off.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the Reddit thread, the live thread, were like saying the same things. Like something's just off, and like it starts with the hard cam. Like it's crazy to think about all that stuff, how it ties in. It ties in. Everybody's job on that production team is important. To lead to the whole show. It's a bunch of people whose faces we'll never know or never see, names we'll never know, that help put AEW on, that help put WWE on, and WWE's even. I mean, good God, you talk about they're the premier live event in the world. They got top class, world class production people. I mean, how many production issues does WWE have? I mean, very rarely, and they're fucking running. How many hours of content every single week and doing all kinds of live shows and the lights never go out. The mics hardly ever fuck up. Like the lighting cues are all on point. That's the thing that drives me crazy about AEW too is the lighting cues are all over the place. And I know we're getting real into the fucking weeds here. Well, like sometimes Ricky will do his little pose and the fucking lighting cue will be like 2.5 seconds after the fact. And you're like, well, it's supposed to be when he does the thing. Like, it's got to be tightened up.
Yeah.
So, again, that's real nerd shit that we just talked about right there. But like, that's what people come to this podcast for, right? They want to talk about the camera shots and the lighting cues and all the behind, stuff that other podcasts don't talk about.
How much fucking fiber cable did they run or not run?
Yeah, fiber cable. But that was a college. I mean, that was Pittsburgh. That was the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was most definitely wired up then.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're running ESPN shit like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it's all probably very similar inputs and outputs.
What if it was something as just simple as like, how like everybody just fucks up at their job? And sometimes people are just like, oh, we got to go with it now. What if it was just as simple as that? They got a new person in, he puts a hard camera on the wrong side. Everybody starts winding it up. Somebody walks in 6 hours later and be like, what the hell did y'all do? And they're like, well, fuck it. We got to go with it now. Everybody's going to switch.
Director should have caught that early enough. Something else was going on there last night because the director is in the chair several hours before the show running through, making sure everything's good. I mean, even for our little, like, high school sports, we were in the chairs set up, if at all possible, 2 hours before the show.
Yeah, even the directing last night was all over the place. The cuts were just what it reminded me of was like Kevin Dunn type shit in WWE. People were making that comparison because they were just like weird cuts to like close-ups. I know Britt Baker was the hometown star, but like there's action going on to the ring. They just cut to a close-up of her face and she's not even doing anything. It's like, well, what's just cutting all over the place. I don't know. It's just weird. Again, nerd shit.
Yeah.
But like,
well, if y'all got any fucking nerd shit y'all want to holler at us about, find us on Twitter at Alabama Slam Pod. And we're also on Instagram at Alabama Slam Pod. You can find us on Facebook. Just search Alabama Slam Podcast. And be sure to follow our network of other fellow podcasters at the Alabama Take on pretty much every social network. And the AlabamaTake.com. Our podcast lives there every week, as well as all of your normal podcast apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and all that shit. As far as I know, it should be on all of them. If you got any questions, just holler at us, and we'll be around. And we'll see y'all next week.
See you next time.